Mark, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into Tuscaloosa. I hope you're doing well, sir.
I'm doing just fine. I got to say, I now know what sets you guys apart. You actually have a promo with the strength coach in it. You guys are hardcore, man.
Hey, he makes $680,000 a year screaming at people. How about that?
Yeah, that's a dream job right now. You get your money's worth out of him. If I paid him that much, I'd want him to make a promo for me too.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, when you think about Scott Cochran, and he's really, other than when you talk about Nick Saban, he's become a celebrity here. I mean, because just from what he's been able to accomplish, and you talk to a lot of the players, and they talk about how important he is of throughout the offseason. He's able to spend a lot of hours with these guys, making sure they're on track.
Oh, the strength coaches they're the coach in the offseason, and if you got a bad one, you can get Maryland, or if you got a bad one, you can get yourself a bad team. But no, they clearly get more than their money's worth out of him. I mean, I've been watching Alabama all summer, and it is amazing to me the size and agility of virtually everybody. It's pretty terrifying, honestly. So, no, look, he gets his money's worth out of him. Alabama clearly knows what they're doing.
Mark, let me ask you, when you look at this from a Louisville perspective, kind of give me some ways that you think they can make this game really, really close and something to really keep an eye on.
I really only think there's one, and I think that it's a combination of Tua being too aggressive, and I mean he threw an interception on a run play, in the national championship game, and it took a bad sack. I think maybe get him too aggressive because I think Louisville's secondary should be all right, and then I think Louisville's wide receivers have got to win against a whole new secondary for Alabama, and I know that every one of those guys was a blue chip guy. But not a lot of them have played a lot, and I think they've got to keep Puma Pass upright enough, kind of a stalemate, and hit big throws. I don't think there's any other way that Louisville wins other than a whole bunch of longer than expected throws and a little bit of too much aggression from Tua. I don't think there's another way they can win. To me, that's the recipe.
What is that transition going to be like with the human joystick of Lamar Jackson making that transition to Jawon Pass?
Yeah, I think the big thing is it puts big pressure on other people to run with the ball. Like Lamar he was the quarterback and he was the running back. He was the one-man play action. He's kind of, honestly, like a fast version of how Florida leaned on Tebow, where he was the running game too. And everyone else was sort of a decoy and a constraint play off of him running the ball inside and then being the quarterback. He was like that. Lamar was the running back and the quarterback, and I think that they've said explicitly the running backs are going to have to run the ball. And it's not like Bobby Petrino doesn't run the ball, but when he had Lamar, he ran Lamar. And I think the big thing is it's going to be running backs running the ball way more than it was with Lamar, because while Jawon Pass is mobile and he's pretty fast, he's just not Lamar. The running backs carrying the ball way more is going to be the biggest difference. And it's kind of a question. It's all new guys there too.
Now, you got to understand here, okay? We're a little bit biased towards Jawon Pass.
What?
Yeah, no, here we are. No, hear me out, okay? And I want to go back. Listen, when we can divide Alabama and Auburn, and we can talk about something that Jawon Pass said coming out of high school, I'll never forget it. We talked about it for like a week here, okay? He said coming out of high school, he said one of the reasons why he didn't look at Auburn was that they don't prepare their quarterbacks for the NFL. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, you become a very popular guy when you throw jabs at Auburn. So we're not going to be too hard on Jawon Pass. We kind of prop him up a little bit. But let me ask you, as far as a guy that's going to stay in that pocket, what's his arm like?
I think his arm strength is very good, and we've gotten very limited looks at him. I'm sure you guys can relate. But I mean, his arm strength is good. I think the big thing with him is just the mechanics, to where he kind of throws it the same way and consistently. That's where he showed up really, really raw. And I'm interested in seeing the progress that he's made from a kid coming out of high school to now in year 3. You'd like to think it's a lot more cleaned up. In the spring, I thought he started out in the spring game kind of a little rough, but then I think he was just nervous. And I think once he settled down, he threw the ball around pretty nicely. But at ACC Media Days, I asked Bobby Petrino is there anything he does better than Lamar Jackson? Like, Lamar wasn't perfect. Is there anything he does better? And he said, I think our just plain old drop-back passing game will be better with Jawon Pass than it was with Lamar Jackson. So Bobby seems to have a lot of confidence in him. And I think he's mobile and he's still going to run. But if you guys remember Bobby's offense at Arkansas and Bobby's offense at Louisville the first time, I think it's going to look more like that than what they did with Lamar Jackson because their strengths are just different.
We're talking right now to Mark Ennis. They're 93.9 up in Louisville, does The Drive, covering college football. I'm sure a lot of basketball talk in that state, but we're trying to get him to talk
a little bit.
Just a little bit. Hey, we're going to get there one day where we talk basketball. We're making some steps in the right direction.
I'll tell you what, you talk basketball, and we'll get a strength coach promo, and then we'll both be there.
Hey, one day, listen, Avery Johnson, listen, we made the tournament, man. We're taking that step. But
baby steps, man.
All right. So here we go. Let me ask you about wide receivers. I'm going to tie all this together. Alabama returns really no starters. We talk about permanent starters from last year in that secondary. Is this an advantage where the wide receivers are talented enough with Jawon Pass that they can take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think the wide receivers are good enough and have done well in big games against good teams in the past. I think that against Clemson they held up just great, and they're the only team in the ACC that returns like 3 600-yard guys. I think the top three guys, like, they can hang. To me, I think that the real question with the wide receivers is the delivery of the ball, quite frankly. I think, and it's both. We just haven't seen Jawon Pass stand in there and take bullets. It's been all garbage time against teams that aren't that good. Last year it was against Kent State or Kentucky. Just the game was already over. Not a big deal. That's not Alabama, and we know that. But the receivers, look, they've played Clemson multiple times. They've played Florida State multiple times. They've played in bowl games against good teams. They've held their own just fine. The question is Jawon Pass throwing the ball and keeping him upright, offensive line, pass rush, that sort of thing. I think if there's even close to kind of a stalemate, I think the receivers can make some plays. When you go back and look, teams don't beat Alabama that don't have receivers win one-on-one. I think they can get their share if the other part of the passing game kind of holds up. It's probably the deepest, best part of the team at wide receiver. But I'll tell you what, if it's not something where they can get something out of it, then this game is going to be a wash for Louisville.
All right, let's go into the defensive side of the football. Where's the strength? Where's the weakness?
Do we have to?
Well, and maybe this is where we get a little bit excited here in Tuscaloosa. Let me get your thoughts. Weakness, strength on that side.
I think the secondary, honestly, it should be the strength of the team. I think they're really deep. They've recruited those positions pretty well, and I think that they are pretty versatile. And I think they got good size, which is absolutely necessary against Alabama. I think the secondary should be pretty good this year. Marlon Character, a guy I'm sure you guys are familiar with, should do a lot for Louisville this year. They're really excited about him. They bring back a number of guys. They've actually recruited that position, oddly, really well. You wouldn't think, but they have. I think the weakness is right up front, and it's not so much defensive line. I think they're okay, but at linebacker, where Alabama can just mash. If Alabama comes out there with tight ends and fullbacks, and Louisville's got to go with like base personnel, they're smallish at linebacker, and they're all, except for the middle linebacker, brand new. It is a recipe. If I'm Nick Saban, and if I'm Mike Locksley, I'm telling the receivers, look, I know you guys are great, and we all want to speak to his arm and all that stuff, but I don't see any reason not to just play man ball and try to maul Louisville as much as I can, because I think it's the place with the biggest mismatch, because I know Alabama is stellar up front, and Louisville's just new, kind of small, and I think Louisville's going to have to sell out. And I know that receiver is a super strength for Alabama, even though those guys are brand new. They're going to have to sell out to stop the run and take some chances to stop it, because I think if they just try to sort of go man-to-man, it's not a good matchup for them.
Mark, when you win 5 out of the last 9, you're always on Saban time. We're being told that he might be a couple of minutes early, so if I have to interrupt you here, that, when you win 5 out of the last 9, he kind of tells you when you're going to do the press conference. It might be 6:05, it might be 6:25, 6:15, 5:55. You just never know with Nick Saban, because he's not always great on this time. But just giving you a little fair warning. Let me ask you our final question here. 25.5 points according to the experts in the desert. Is that a fair line?
It's probably a little large, but it's not outlandish. I mean, because that's just like if they 42-14, that's 28. And that's not unreasonable. You see what Alabama does in these openers. And with Louisville, I think there's just so many questions. It's not so much that people are doubting. They don't know. And with Alabama, you know. And that, to me, I think the number really reflects that. And there's a lot of ways that number or close to it could be there. I think it'll probably end up being something like 17 or 14. But I don't think it'll be just a complete wash. I think Bobby didn't forget how to coach. And it's game one. But I do think it really just reflects how much people don't know about Louisville. And if we learn that even some of those parts that we're unsure about are decent, like Jawon Pass, like, say, the defensive line with some new pieces or Van Gorder as the coordinator, if they're maybe a little better, it could be a closer game than that. But I don't think it's a crazy number. I mean, if Alabama can beat the hell out of USC in the opener, they can do it to Louisville, too. So it's not crazy.
Well, hey, listen, we have some respect. Obviously, we talked about Jawon Pass, but a guy that's a big friend of our program, Coach Howard Snellenberger, and we're going to attempt to get him on tomorrow. Man, what a legend! I'm sure he's the same way up in y'all's part of the woods too.
Oh no, people quote Howard Snellenberger only second basically to the Bible here. They're like, no, that guy absolutely, and that's awesome that you're going to have him on. But I will say this. Have that dump button ready because Howard doesn't care that he's on the radio.
Yeah. We say he brought Joe Namath. Get him to tell that story here. And so, Howard Snellenberger brought Joe Namath to Tuscaloosa. Hey, Mark, I got to run, man. It looks like Saban's going to be a couple of minutes early. 93.9 up in Host of the Drive up in Louisville. Man, I appreciate you for jumping on for a couple of minutes. Let me invite people to connect with you at Mark Ennis, Ennis. Appreciate you jumping on here in Tuscaloosa. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Anytime, buddy. Anytime.